sponsored by Senator Biodun Lujimi from Ekiti State, the Wisi Human Rights and Legal Matters, Senator David Umaru. The bill would facilitate and encourage the disclosure of improper conduct by persons, public officers, as well as corporate. Thank you very much for finding time to come.
Thank you for having me.
And we're also having the first appearance of Prince Eshet, also a legal practitioner. Thank you very much for making time to be here.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so
for the first time, but for an appreciably...
For the first time in a long time.
Yes, for an appreciable apparentness, ostensibility, it appears
certain percentage of the money stolen or that was recovered has been promised to be given to whoever is blowing the whistle. How well do you think that has worked, given how much money the federal government claims it has recovered?
Now, how do you protect the nation where it is concerned? So, for me, it was just like trying to manage how do you, if by your information we can factor.
All right, we're going to get to details of that, but let's talk about whistleblowing generally as a policy that has become popularized around the globe. In 2013, when Edward Snowden stole, that's what the US calls it, stole and leaked classified information from the national security. That was when whistleblower also became a bit more popularized. As we speak right now, it is still an offense. Snowden cannot get back to America. He's still having a temporary asylum in Russia, I guess. How do we draw the line between breaking the law and blowing the whistle?
I came out with a whole lot of theories and postulations. You see, whistleblowing as a law, in Nigeria, we know that it's fledgling. There's no law yet on it. Whatever has been happening, everybody that belongs to the Nigerian government shall be paid into the Consolidated Revenue Fund before it can be withdrawn. So any money that you're paying to the whistleblower ought to first of all enter into marking and given to whistleblowers has not been backed by law. So for now, we can only discuss it based on the need not to be too legalistic. In whistleblowing is a battle between public interest, good faith, and private protection. In the case of Edward Snowden, it became a question of who should define what it means to whistle public, that you can safely say is a good whistleblowing. So in other words, can government act against public interest? Over the years, we have seen that and accepted that, yes, a lot of Hitler is an example, Mussolini is an example. Even in Nigeria today, you have seen a lot of instances where government have been acting against the interest of its citizenry. So when government, for example, starts tapping who is a staff of government and whistleblowers on the government, can it be said that that person has acted against public interest? It is it's a very, very important question you have. A neutral definition of public interest so that wherever the breach, the unethical conduct, the fraud or the irregular or negative action is, we are seeing where it is the government that is dictating the play. They are the ones, you can say that it is not for public interest. We cannot restrict it to only when it favors the government. We should expand it to it as whistleblowing. So the person should be taken in for having committed a crime. But today, the discussion is tending towards public interest. Whether it is in bad faith or not, it has nothing to do with good. For the good of the individuals, it should be enough for protection under the whistleblowing law.
When we say public interest, it is relative when we come to a place like Nigeria. Absolutely. Because afterwards, Edward's revelation, we saw the U.S. government updating its freedom act. I mean, it appears that life is even harder for Nigerians when people are blowing whistle, when the government is fighting corruption, than before. How do you think this is relevant to us as a people?
Yes, you see, in fighting corruption or in trying to reform a system, you must have a framework whistle blowing or protects the whistle blowers. So you need a regulatory framework. You need a legal framework. For instance, you must also be able to differentiate between national security, you cannot bring it to the open. Now, if you look at the policy framework of this whistleblowing as enunciated by the Minister of Finance before the Senate now tried to legalize, which areas, for instance, when there is an infraction of financial regulations, procurement procedures, fraud, mismanagement, misappropriation, fraud, and other crimes against the states financially for investigation. Because, for instance, if you don't have knowledge, how are you going to investigate? Now, the whistle could be blown in different ways. It could even be by the press. For instance, like in the United States, what you should do, what the authorities should do, the confidentiality of the information disclosed, right, the protection of the whistleblower. You see, you need this legal framework. You know, the Whistleblowers Protection Act. It has just passed at the Senate. The House of Representatives has to do something to it before it is assented. Now, I've looked through that bill a little. It is too expansive. Whistleblowing. Because that is very important. And then, how do you protect that whistleblower? Especially when it comes to proper investigation and, in fact, a prosecution. You see, these are matters that sometimes, because of the people involved. So when we are talking about the Whistleblowing Act, a lot of legal framework has to be laid. It is understandable that there is nothing that happens in the government circle without people knowing. And you have to encourage people to say something.
As to screen, please try not to call that number. We just need to read your opinion and make it as of the House of Reps. Abdul Mumenin Jibrin blew a whistle, and then what happened afterwards was that it was a lower assembly.
I don't think they have any option. There's no option left for the House of Representatives. They would be telling the Nigerian people that they indeed are part of our problems if they fail to pass that bill. It is a very important bill in the life of Nigeria today. In addition to the Witness Protection Act and there's a fight against corruption to the next level. So I don't see why the House of Representatives cannot pass that bill. I think the ball is in their court now, and they have no reason not to pass it. You see, the case of what do you call him, in the very clear light of the law. When you whistleblow and it leads to the recovery of funds, or it leads to the detection of crime, that is whistleblowing. But when you people ought to know that you have said somebody has stolen, you go to the marketplace and you scream to high mountains, he has stolen, and people say, hey, he has stolen, no, he has stolen. But when investigations commence, it is whistleblowing. So that is where you have to differentiate that. You see, what happens in the National Assembly and in the executive, between the National Assembly and the executive with regards to our budget, is something that it is difficult for us to. Some frauds are lawful because there's no law against them. We know somebody is actually pilfering. You know somebody is stealing, but there's no law covering it. That is what happens in that regime of has been signed and called Appropriation Act, signed by the President as Appropriation Act or passed into law as Appropriation Act. Anything done before that cannot amount to an offense. Yes, so in beyond what the Senate has done now, I am not sure whether what Senate has done now includes involuntary refund of funds. The general definition of whistleblowing is when involuntary in the sense that the entire legal process, criminal trial process, was undertaken. And after all those stress and troubles, it was discovered that indeed that person stole. At the point he's releasing his information, it was not enough to actually locate the money. So we need the House of Representatives to intervene in this situation to fine-tune some of these details.
I discover you wanted to
yes,
something.
I think the primary thing here is this. At this stage of our national means you have to put certain systemic frameworks build the institutions. And how do you do this? You can only be proactive when there are certain checks that before somebody commits an offense, before somebody steals money, before somebody misappropriates money, about the offense that had been committed, that is, for instance, misappropriation or fraud that has been committed, or is about to be committed, or is likely to be committed. So which means that if you are in a system and you have seen that, for instance, the financial regulations want to be subverted, the important thing that we need to really consider is, what are the limitations? It is not every whistle you have to blow. What if you blow the wrong whistle? What happens to you? Because we must also put certain checks. Otherwise, people would use it against their perceived enemies or opponents.
Let me stay with you, Prince, and let's talk about how Ali Dume,
Yes.
who had asked for investigation of allegations that the Senate President imported a bulletproof Range Rover as well as perjury on behalf of Dino Melai. Do you think that this bill is going to impact on these house rules, or they're still going to be standing? The Senate is still going to have to suspend people who blow whistles?
For instance, if you take the bill now, if it is passed, for instance, by the House of Representatives and assented to by the President or the acting President, it becomes law. There are channels you have to blow your whistle. You don't need to blow your whistle by addressing a press conference. So when you legal framework as to how you can blow a whistle now, it's just that a policy framework was either being put in place or whatsoever.
But some would say
But
that
what I'm trying to say is this. What I'm trying to say is this: the Senate rules will still apply, but the Senate rule will not stop a senator who sees in that act. Then you cannot suspend him.
Barrister KJ, how do we define Ndume's action? He wasn't even the one that blew the whistle. He only called the attention of the House to what was already, you know, on the print, on the media.
Well, that's a very tough one. Yes, it's actually technically not reporting what the media reported. It was actually technically asking that this thing should be investigated by the House, by the Senate.
But shouldn't the Senate, I mean, one would have thought, I think it was you who mentioned how it works in developed climes.
Yes.
When the media
or a section of the media is awash with this particular issue, and that there is need for us to have a look at it. But for you to now present as if you know it so much.
Was that the case?